Staying with us on the #1 breakfast show in the country, Morning at NTV. My name is Romeo Busiko. Let's take you to Kabalagala. Very good morning to some of the beautiful people within that jurisdiction. It is the traffic update, courtesy of my brother, Stephen Mbide. How are you doing, sir, this beautiful morning, and what's happening within Kabalagala?
Very fine, Romeo Busiko. Kabalagala, before the lockdown, by now you'd be seeing people coming out of the many pubs and clubs around this place. And you would be seeing shops around this place very, very open. But now, because of the lockdown, of course, you see 1, 2, 3 vehicles sloping towards the Muyenga Road, which is the one connecting you towards Kisugu, Namuongo, as well as Muyenga, Bukasa, and Namuongo through Chivuli. And that is just as clear as you can see there. That is Muyenga Road. There is a barricade there, but the police officers are just coming now to make sure that they stop whoever is not supposed to be on the road. That is, if you are not an essential worker, and also those on foot are also will be asked to identify themselves. And turning towards the Gaba Road, for you who is coming from the other side of Buziga, Kansanga, and the rest of the Gaba areas, just know that for you, it's only as you drive towards the Kabalagala police station, that is where you're going to be finding that barricade that will be also taking you something like 5 minutes before you continue your journey, linking you towards the clock tower, which is very clear as you would wish. Also, if you're connecting towards Machinde side, you will not be finding any delays there. To and from Machinde is as clear as you would like it to be. This is what is happening here in Kabalagala via traffic and flow information here on Morning at NTV. Back to you, Romeo Busiko.
With the traffic update, thank you very much, my brother. That's how we do it on Morning at NTV. We do not want to leave you in the dark. Before you leave your humble abode, we would like to, give you that information that is going to help you, make that very, very safe journey from your home to that jurisdiction that you are targeting. But then we are also saying, before you leave that humble abode, you need to ensure that you're arming yourself with a face mask. Not simply arming yourself with one, but wearing one. It is covering all those sensitive parts through which the COVID-19 pathogens could invade your body. Social distancing, 2 to 3 meters in that regard. People are walking to work, so please avoid those hot concentrations, those big groups. You could be feeling safer moving in a group of 5 to 10 people, because there are some boys out there who are actually looking out for suspecting citizens and robbing them, and you might feel safer in a big group. But we want you to be cognizant of the fact that when you are in a big group, one of those individuals could be a carrier, and through that process of walking and walking and so forth, you'll realize that you can catch this COVID-19 disease if you are not wearing a face mask or ensuring a social distancing in that regard. So that is the traffic update, courtesy of my brother Stephen Mbide. He shall be joining us later on at around 8:30 a.m. to talk about what is happening on the ground. We shall go to the zoo and talk about what is happening there. So please look out for that conversation also. Now, did you know that half of the 7.6 billion people who roam this earth do not have access to the internet? The digital divide is real. We are saying that digital inclusion is the empowerment of individuals and societies to be able to use ICT. It enables them to contribute to and benefit from today's burgeoning or increasing technological societies or countries. If many of the countries are adopting ICT, and then the citizens cannot use ICT or do not have access to ICT services, that is a big problem. If as a country are moving on to ICT and then the citizens can't use technological services or tools, then that is a recipe for disaster. Today we want to focus on the PWDs, persons with disabilities. Before the onset of this pandemic in 2019, even before, it was hard for our persons with disabilities to access school, regular school. Now that the pandemic hit, yes, it was harder for them. Many did not have jobs before the pandemic, so poverty played a role and so forth. Now here we are during the COVID-19 pandemic. We are saying, in the spirit of continued learning, please use the internet. But how many can afford or access the internet? How many persons with disabilities, the over 6.6 million persons with disabilities, how many of them can access these technological tools to ensure continued learning? That's why we are here, and that's why we want to task Mr. Musa Mugoya, the Program Officer, Right to Education at the Initiative for Social and Economic Rights, to actually help us expound more on the impact of the likelihood of the impact of such a devastating development when PWDs do not have access to the internet. And he joins me right now in studio to compound more on that very pertinent issue. Very good morning, sir.
Good morning, Romeo.
Thank you for joining us on Morning at NTV.
I'm happy to be here.
Yes, I've said quite a lot about this very topic, but the likely impact of the fact that many of our children might be left out of accessing the internet. What is it?
First of all, before, immediately after the lockdown, the first lockdown,
Yes.
we undertook a study when the government started the first reopening of schools. We undertook a study to ascertain the challenges that many children went through during that process when schools were closed, because you remember this was the first time in this country we had never had a situation where schools are closed for a long time. We found out that in some communities, of course, government had set out to provide self-study materials, but also those self-study materials were inadequate. In other words, were not sufficient, because I think they gave out around 25% of the total number of learners. So many missed out. Now, when it came to lessons which were conducted on radio, you find that some people at that time didn't even have. There are those ones who had radios, because I think when you look at UBOS data, it says that around 45% of the households in Uganda have own radio sets, and then 17% own televisions. But now there is a difference between ownership and functionality. You may own, but when it is not functioning, during the lockdown, there is a lot of prioritization. Do I pay electricity and watch a TV, or I save the money and buy food? So at the end of the day, we found that many children missed out on the programs which were broadcasted on radio and television. But also the other thing, to come to straight to your question on internet, we found out that National Curriculum Development Center did, of course, its part. They developed self-study materials and uploaded them on their website.
Indeed.
Which required people to go there, maybe parents and guardians, to download them. However, you find that I was talking to one of the parents, actually within Kampala, quite an empowered parent, where you find that he's earning a salary. And she was telling me that downloading those materials, first of all, for a set of primary 5, it will take you around 10,000,
Yes,
20,000. After downloading, you have two options. Either you have a computer or a laptop from which the child is going to learn from, or you have to go and print. Now, printing, if, for example, you say you're going to print and you're going to use, let us say, black and white. Up country, that one may cost you around 500 per page.
I hear you.
So that is the entire package. You'll find that it is taking almost 200,000. That is primary 5. And of course, I'm saying that on assumption that maybe that parent has only one child, but you find that they have many. Then the other issue, if you're not going to print, then you say maybe I will acquire a laptop or a desktop and a monitor for the child. Now, that is also another huge cost. So for a parent who has been working in an arcade, whether in Kampala here, or a child of a taxi driver up country in Mbale or Busia or Amuru, who is not working, it means that person is already cut off. But also, it is very unfortunate that at this time when the government is trying to encourage long distance learning, remote learning, it is at the same time when they have slapped a 12% excess duty on data. Now, there was a debate that you see that data will be separated. There will be the one for education, and I think health will not be subject to the 12% excess duty. But how are you going to separate that? We know for sure that what usually happens, you get your phone, you subscribe for data, the same thing you use to access email, to even download the materials and so on. So you can't...
Mr. Musa Mugoya, let's not beat around the bush on this issue. We need to actually throw the facts straight in the face of the government. Digital inclusion is the empowerment of individuals and societies to enable them use ICT. So if government slaps this 12% tax on data, aren't they actually increasing the digital divide?
Yes. Yes, they are, of course. Already, first of all, it was there. even within, when you look at, I think also data from UBOS, it was indicating that over 90% of the learners, even in the school setting, don't have what? Don't have access to internet. So already within the education institutions, there is a very huge digital divide gap. You find that schools, maybe a few in Kampala and maybe Mukono, Kampala metropolitan area, have access to internet. But you find that many in rural areas, they don't have. So if the children have not been accessing internet within the schools, it is of course you can just imagine that in their homes they don't have access to internet, because you find that even most of them, their parents are using these small phones, not the smartphones, and those are mainly the gadgets that people use to access internet. So already, that for me, I think that that tax is counterproductive to the technological advancement of the country.
And we also envisage a situation where so many of our children are going to be dropping out because they do not have access to continued learning. Number one, many will decide, let me just get married off quickly. Many are going to fall victim to teenage pregnancies and so forth. The likely impact of this lack of access to the internet or education during this continued learning.
As I've said from the beginning, so far ever since Corona, of course, broke out in Uganda, and then we went into the lockdown, we have done 2 studies. One which was been, of course, looking at the whole thing of implementation of phased reopening of schools and the effects which had been caused by the closure of schools. Then one was, that one we did it with other international partners, Friends of Nation in Ghana, and another, and Human Rights Watch. That one was mainly looking at COVID-19 poverty and child labor.
Indeed.
But we found out that because the children are not occupied, many of them, especially for the girls, you find that they are now into, have been turned into care providers. Some have been married off. Others, of course, have been impregnated by the scavengers in their communities. Others have been, you find that others now, because the families are struggling, so the parent will have to ask them to accompany him or her every morning to go and work on the plantations.
So child labor was a case.
So child labor, teenage pregnancy was a case. And the challenge with that, it is going to widen the inequality. The inequality in terms of literacy level and education, but also in terms of social and economic growth of the country. You will find that the poor will remain poor and the rich will be able to somehow progress, but those ones who are poor, they are most likely not to get out of that trap.
Let's focus on the PWDs for a moment. What are some of the challenges that persons living with disabilities are grappling with right now when it comes to access of continued learning, the internet and education?
First of all, even before the lockdown, already many of our schools were not in a position to take on many children with special needs. The blind, the deaf, you go to many UPE schools, you may not even find a qualified teacher in special needs education. And right now, it is even worse. The other today, I saw a communication from the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Education and Sports, and he was saying that school lessons on radio and television will be resuming on radio stations for 2 classes.
Indeed.
Now, for a person who is deaf, already is left out. He will not be able to follow those classes. The other thing is that for lessons which are conducted on television, there is no provision for sign language. So
they are missing out.
So a deaf child will not be able to follow. Even I think, for example, for lessons on television, to even require that at least there are subtitles. I see here sometimes when you're reporting news, if, for example, the person you're interviewing is talking in Uganda and the bulletin is in English, you do subtitles.
Indeed.
When he's talking in English and then the bulletin is in Uganda, you do subtitles.
Yes.
Now, that provision is not there. But also the other issue, we find that many children with special needs, their level of concentration is low. So
you need to be patient.
You need to be patient. Now, this is a situation where the teacher is not there. And even,
no one to help them.
Yes, and even you may find that many of them who are conducting these lessons on television and radio have no element of special needs education. So for them, I think it is very worse.
Very, very, very worse. And we're also getting information that some might even give up on education as a whole.
No, already.
Not even just dropping out, but as a whole, just give up on education because they have no, chance of actually continuing with their education during this lockdown. It is expensive for me to get onto the internet. It's even more expensive for me to get a smartphone to begin with. So availability, affordability, accessibility, and all these issues have been touted as major, major hurdles.
Absolutely. And you see, you find that you find that, as I've said, we did some study. And we found out that even when the schools were reopened, when we had the phased reopening for the children to get back into the school setting, actually the return was very low. Many children, you find that a child may be before, first of all, of course, now is struggling to get money to get materials and everything. But also, you may find that some of them moved on. I mean, before he was not earning anything, now he goes to a plantation, he gets money, says, why should I go back to school again? Others, you find that maybe they've already been married off by their parents, so already the parent is enjoying the sugar and the salt. So many are going to drop off. And by the way, you remember by the time they closed the schools this time during this second lockdown, there are children who had never been to school since last year. Those on primary 1, primary 2, primary 3, that had never reported back to school. So those ones, now it is almost like over a year, they have never been to school. But there was also another category, like those ones who were supposed to join primary 1 this year, they have never joined. And because of the cost of accessing learning on internet and downloading materials on internet or attending Zoom class, I was seeing, I think some people I see who are advertising saying we are offering classes on Zoom and so on. But remember, they are saying for every class maybe it is around 20,000. And but before you even enter the class, you need to have data, which data has been increased. So I think out of many of them are going to lose morale.
Indeed.
Yeah, and
But most of these challenges, Musa Mugoya, I'll be honest with you, we've actually compounded more of these challenges even during the onset of the first lockdown, that is in 2020. We've had these conversations left, right and center, but then no resolutions coming in from government. It seems like they didn't learn anything from the first lockdown, and then we are here in the second lockdown with the same problem. Has government learned anything from the previous lockdown?
I want to agree with you because from even the manner in which the schools were closed, it appeared as if there was no planning and even surveillance of how the virus was moving. Because government had secured some money under the from the Global Partnership for Education through the World Bank to provide self-study materials. Because they were saying that during the arrangement for the implementation of the phased reopening of schools was going to be a hybrid. Learners go back to school, but when they get back, they study for some time and then they are given self-study materials to go back and then allow other class to come. However, that did not happen. I would have expected that at least maybe if there has been some preparations, these learners, before they were sent home, this was the right opportunity to give out the materials. Because right now, how are they going to locate them? I heard that Minister of Education now is starting to give out self-study materials to children with disabilities, the braille, those ones who are blind. But now you see, me and you, we know very well that in Uganda you find that someone from Mumbale, a child from Mumbale, attends school in Kampala, one from Gulu goes to Mbalala. So how are they going to locate them?
Indeed.
They had an opportunity when those children were in school to give out those materials. But even then, for example, the disorganization we had during the phase, when we were commencing the implementation of phase reopening, we are not seeing the discussions coming up because already we are halfway the lockdown. I imagine after the lockdown what is going to happen. The discussions and the preparations and engaging the communities and the population about the opening of schools should start now. To handle issues do with the transportation, issues deal with the how they are going to regulate school fees. It was also a very big scam where you find that some parents had paid money and the children had been in school for a short period of time. But when they went back, the schools were saying, no, we want our full payment. One would imagine that maybe by that time, or even by this time, government should have at least engagement with those to handle those nitty-gritties which may always come up, should start, such that we don't again start raising those issues when the reopening starts. Because we have already lost a lot of time. When learning begins, or when schools reopen, parents should be just ready to enroll their children back to school.
Of course, the reopening of the schools is another, contentious conversation. The president is saying we can only reopen the schools again after vaccinating all our teachers, and we haven't received the batch that we are waiting for. 2 weeks away from the end of this lockdown, we haven't received the 585,000 vaccines that we are waiting. There will be some 285,000 coming in from COVAX facility, AstraZeneca, and 285,000 from Sinovac. And then the following month, we shall get some 688,000 from still COVAX facility, that is AstraZeneca, and also 2 million from Johnson & Johnson this very month, also Pfizer and BioNTech. But then we haven't seen any of these vaccines, and then the lockdown is elapsing. So what can the parents do right now as the students are at home to actually help them with their continued learning? I'm looking at a solution here, Mr. Musa Mugoya. What can the parents do to actually ensure that their children continue with continued learning under the self-study initiative? What can they do? Because schools might not reopen tomorrow, even after 2 weeks.
Yes, it is very true. One, I think for the parents who have, for example, you find that maybe a child is in primary 5 and has an elder sister or brother who is in primary 7, let them support each other. Because for the I mean, it is challenging. You find that right now, someone is struggling to get food for their children, but also for some parents are illiterate, so such a parent has no option. I think you will agree that when you go up country, many children are mixing with each other. I don't. When you go there, you will find that this one is living this home. They are praying together. Everything is happening. So, my thinking, and this is my opinion, I may be wrong. I think the closure of schools up country, especially primary schools, may not have been necessary. They should have given them an opportunity to continue.
As those in rural areas? Those in rural
areas. Why? Because one, you find that at least the virus was not that prevalent there. The reports we have received that it was actually more prevalent in boarding schools, which also shows that the COVID-19 is an opportunity for us to rethink our education system. Why should someone carry a child all the way from Mbale to Kampala? You have seen children here in Kampala being crisscrossed. They wake up and they are put in the cars. The child is coming from Wakiso, is coming from the other side of Wakiso, maybe Nansana, taking the child to Entebbe Road for school. I think the schools within that particular area should be able to accommodate that particular learner. So I think the parents, of course, those ones who are elites right now, you find that they are at home. Many of them are working from so they can support their children. But for the for those ones who are illiterates and those who are struggling even to put food on their table, it will be foolhardy really to tell them on how they can support their children. But I think we had an opportunity to decide whether we should have implemented national-wide closure of schools or we should have done case by case, especially those ones which are day schools in rural areas.
The main pointer here, even though the students might largely be unable to access the internet and so forth, can the parents themselves help them with their self-studying?
As I've explained...
Basing on their experience. Me as a parent, I could not have the material, I could not have the internet, but based on what I went through the system, it could be my primary 5 learner, and I also went through primary 5. Can I use that prowess or skill that I learned back in the day to just help my child instead of waiting on the government? We are saying the more you wait on the government to maybe lift this lockdown or reopen schools, which might not open in the shortest time possible, our students, learners, are growing more redundant.
No, I would urge those parents who are capable, who have gone to school, to support their children. When I was in primary...
Spare some time.
Yes, when I was in primary, I learned, actually I think I must have learned mathematics from my father, because he would ask me to get that exercise book. It had so I would keep on asking, 1 times 1, and we go. Yes. So he would give you the answer instantly. So that's how he was able to teach me. So those ones who are capable, I would urge them to do so. I mean, it doesn't make sense if you are at the end of the day, this is your child.
Indeed, because my mother used to do that. She would make me go get some straws around the neighborhood, all these straws around the neighborhood, bring them and we start counting. You get the mathematics table and she helps you, on a case-by-case basis, simple mathematics, and it was working.
So those ones who are in a position, they should be able to support. However much, you may be too busy, but at least find time for the children and support them.
Indeed.
Yes, I would urge them to do so.
Now, let's take a look at what government has done or continues to do. They secured some $14 million through the Global Partnership for Education. Is this project being effective?
That is the grant which was used to support the phased reopening of schools. The inspectors had to go around to monitor the schools which have complied with the standard operating procedures and give them certificates for reopening. It was also, I think, the same money which was also used to extend grants for schools to put in place equipments and materials for the phased reopening, like maybe washing facilities and so on. But also that grant was supposed to do a lot of engagement to sensitize the community and so on. As I've said, we have heard that the schools are supposed to sorry for that. The schools were supposed to. The permanent secretary has indicated that learning on radio is supposed to resume, but we have not had the publicizing of that program, because it is starting today. I doubt whether, for example, maybe if you NTV have been engaged on that to inform the general public. So those are some of the things that grant was supposed to do. That grant was also supposed to be used to provide self-study materials, both for the children with the special needs and the rest of the children. Also, those materials have not been distributed, so we are waiting when they will be distributed. As I've said, when the children returned back to school, that was the great opportunity or the appropriate time to give them out. They were not given out. I don't know when they will be in position to give them out, because as of now, it will be very difficult to locate those children.
15 million learners left out in the dark, and we do know that continued learning is actually a very, very huge factor that we can use or maximize on during this COVID-19 pandemic. But then we are getting news, according to the United Nations, they authored a report in 2019 during the onset of the pandemic, and they were saying half of the world's 7.6 billion people do not have access to the internet, meaning 3.3 billion people are offline. They have no access to the internet in that regard. So how are those children studying? That's the $64,000 question moving forward. Speaking about variations, we want to go to Moyo and look at how the learners within that jurisdiction are grappling under this COVID-19 lockdown and the consequent measures being put in place. Continued learning, access to the internet. Skovini Cheta, a very good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us live from Moyo. Talk to us about the effects of continued learning within this area, the situation in terms of education and relief, sir. Very good morning.
Good morning, Romeo Bisiku and the viewers of NTV. I'm live from Moyo. Moyo is chill, as you can see at the background. The issues related to relief is really one of the issues that people are really daring to, but unfortunately, up to now, the establishments that I have, none of the members who have been, I really have not even received any aid from the government. As of course, today the day is ending. But in relations to education, you know, the life is of the children in Moyo is really at their need. And as of now, most of the children are really flowing to the streets of Moyo town to conduct a petty business for their survival, for their family. And over a planting issue here in Moyo, which has happened 2 days ago, was a man of Boda impregnated more than 4 girls who are teenager pregnant, and this thing has really caused havoc in the minds of the people. And to make the matter worse, the relative of the 2 girls who were being impregnated went to revenge to the man who impregnated. As of now, he is on the run. But when they reach at the homes of this man, they touch the houses or the house of this man, and this has really caused some drastic situation here. And of course, at the moment, the police is looking for this man, but this man is nowhere to be seen. So that is all the effect of COVID-19, because, you know, the children are not in school. As of now, this thing has really caused drastic issues in the society of Moyo here. But of course, you know, yesterday I was with one of the stakeholders sharing some moment about the issues of education, how the students will be careful. And of course, he said that there is nothing that the parents can do apart from just having children be guided. But of course, the children do not have even that aspect of listen to their parents sometimes, like especially this one for at the adolescent stage. And the situation here is really alarming. And the parents, some of the parents are calling the government to develop other alternatives to handle the current situation as far as this lockdown is concerned. Back to you, Romeo Bisuki from Moyo.
Brother Skovini Cheta, before you go, I have a question for you. The NCDC, that is the National Center, the NCDC actually developed some home learning materials for pre-primary, primary and secondary learners. Are they accessible in Moyo? The National Curriculum Development Center.
Yeah, there are some issues where which people make anything, but you'll find that the children are really roaming around in the streets of Moyo town, particularly in the evening. So there are things that they can do apart from doing other issues related to the petty business. But you'll find that the parents are also reluctant because they have nothing to do at the moment as far as the life of their children is concerned.
Materials that are being distributed by government, are they accessing them?
No, there are no signs of distribution of relief aid to the community here in Moyo. But of course, you'll find that the few who just engage themselves in their garden activity get fruit from there. But some still not even go in whatever in the garden because of the rain patterns here. Some areas are not experiencing rain, so they end up going to access food in the market, like the people who also do in Kampala. And as of now, this is the situation here in Moyo in relation to the lockdown.
Skovini Cheta coming to you live from Moyo. Thank you very much, my brother. We are in a very mind-boggling situation. We are touting the use of the internet for our children to maximize on their abilities to actually go ahead with continued learning. And then we are slapping a 12% tax on data. There is a huge, huge double standard for our planners. It means you do not actually care about digital inclusion, which is the empowerment of individuals and societies to enable them use ICT. When you put a 12% tax on data, you're actually doing the opposite. I don't know if these legislators can actually, and government leaders can actually see this the way we do right here on Morning at NTV. Our children are largely at home. They are not learning. It is hard to access the internet. So what is being done in the interim? we need to do more in that regard. I still have Mr. Musa Mugoya. He is the Program Officer, Right to Education at the Initiative for Social and Economic Rights. Let's talk about what government should be doing in the interim as we grapple with this 42-day lockdown, which is only 2 weeks away, and what needs to be done to actually arrest this situation. Musa Mugoya, we are still here. Let's talk about resolutions and lessons that have been learned or should be learned.
Yes, of course, the lockdown has been a big, COVID-19 and the resultant lockdown has been a great lesson. Would we expect anyone to be able to learn something from it? One, as far as education is concerned, it has demonstrated that actually public provision of education is the only sustainable alternative and even equitable to ensure access to education by all. As you have heard, even those children that are in private schools and of course even those ones that are in UPE schools, all of them are crying to government, please, what are you doing to handle our issue of continued learning during the lockdown? Secondly, it has been, the other lesson has been that we need to strengthen our infrastructure, our education delivery infrastructure, both in terms of the buildings, but also in terms of technology, ICT and so on, such that in case there is any eventuality or any challenge that happens, the system is resilient to respond immediately. The other issues, I think government will have to work effectively on securing even data, knowing which school the child attends, where do they come from. Because I've said right now, even if they are to distribute self-study materials, they don't have those, that information to locate. Their children are coming, you find those ones from Karamoja attend school in Wakiso, those ones from Wakiso go to Mukono. So it is a challenge. They need to come up and put in place credible data to handle that. And of course also to ensure that they implement an education system that is inclusive.
Yes.
I understand the national education inclusive policies in the offing, so I hope when it comes up to be fully implemented to ensure that the education system is able to respond to the challenges and the needs of the learners, as opposed to leaving some of them out of the cracks. Thank you very much.
Musa Mugoya, he is the Program Officer, Right to Education at the Initiative for Social and Economic Rights. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right, we do have other conversations that are in the offing. We have Innocent Kawaya, the CEO of High People. He's going to be talking about the 40 Days 40 Fintechs campaign. We'll be right back with that conversation. He'll be joining us